Digital signage seems like it's a technological thing. Very often, in fact, we find it's given to the IT department of an organization to handle and sometimes even manage, not just implement. We spend a lot of time in these podcasts and in the blogs and the other literally hundreds of things that we've written about digital signage and business communications and organizational communications, that really it uses technology, but it isn't really a technological tool. It's a communications tool attempting to change and affect human behavior and create a more integrated consumer-like experience with information and data. Having said all that, it is actually made up of technology, and that's hardware. And I got to be honest and say, I don't know a ton about hardware. I mean, I know what most people know. I know that TV's nice and that one's not so nice, and this phone's cool and that phone's not cool, and I like this toaster and that blender. But I'm not really a hardware guy. So I have a hardware guy. Hey, Joe Murray, systems engineer and architect for Visix. How are you, Joe?
Doing all right. How are you, Derek?
Excellent. I'd like to thank Joe for talking to me today about hardware, and I'd like to thank all of you for listening. This is digital signage done right. Whether you're new to digital signage or a seasoned pro, this podcast gives you practical advice about systems, communications, and content to better engage your audience. I'm Derek DeWitt, communications specialist for Visix. Welcome to Digital Signage Done Right. Okay, so obviously we know there are screens or displays, we might want to call them. We've talked about them plenty. You and I actually spoke about networking. So what else is there? I mean, I kind of made a list. All I could come up with was servers, players, and then that's kind of, I ran out, and then just like,
that's it.
And like you got to update stuff. That's all I could think of.
There's a few other components to add to that list. You've got your user workstations where you run Access TV Design,
which is a computer.
Important. A computer, yeah. But a nicer computer. You don't want some crappy. We found this for $100 at Walmart.
Commodore 64.
Yeah, you don't want the Commodore 64. That's not unsupported.
4 colors. Remember that? 4. Of course, you're too young. 4 colors.
I have a Commodore 64.
Freaked out. 4 colors.
But that's important. I know we talked in a previous podcast about networking. That's obviously important. But I believe today we're just going to focus on sort of our player hardware and the hardware offerings we have.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about servers first.
Sure.
In many respects, at least from the consumer side of things, that's the difference between an on-premise solution or a hosted or cloud solution is on-premise, and you, the customer, have the server, and cloud, someone else has the server.
Right. In this case, our cloud offering is hosted by us.
Right.
So first of all, we offer both those options. We're pretty flexible in that we have a cloud-based offering where we will take care of the hosting for you.
Right.
You just have the players at your location. Then you've got an on-premise solution where we can actually sell you server hardware that we manufacture and is up to snuff for our own specifications. And that's a rack-mounted system you can install just like any other regular server hardware. And then to get even more flexible, we can just sell you the software if you want, and you can install it on your own server hardware, Access TV Manager.
Right. I've got servers.
Right. A lot of customers, are moving to virtual machines, and so rather than having multiple physical servers, they'll just have that virtual machine host that will host all these virtual servers for them, which is pretty nice. But, for certain customers that don't want to deal with that, or for whatever security reason or budget reason don't have a VM environment, then, you can use our server hardware, your own server hardware, or just have it in the cloud.
But, you got it. There's no way to bypass this.
No, the server is really at the core of Access TV. Like most enterprise products, there has to be a endpoint, or really a very specific central point, I should say.
Right.
That hosts all the content, hosts all the settings. It's the main place where all of our softwares connect.
That's where the CMS lives, basically.
Yeah, it is the CMS, exactly. Yeah. Access TV Manage is our CMS. So it hosts the web interface where you can schedule stuff and upload content. It hosts the web API calls for Access TV Design so that users could make their layouts, and that gets synchronized with the server. And then it's the place where our players themselves actually, reach out and get content in their settings from.
Right.
And so, yeah, it is the central point of all of your layouts, all your settings, all your content, all your users. So the server is pretty important, to say the least.
Yeah, it's like you got to have a commanding officer.
There you go. That's the server.
So the server has all this stuff, and then it sends it out to these, used to call them channel players, now they call them media players, but to a media player, and the media players then send the signals to the displays.
Exactly.
So what the heck is a media player? Is it a small box? Is it like a computer unto itself? Like VLC, is that a media player? Are they different kinds of media players? Because I see this term, sometimes it's used for something that's hardware, sometimes it's software. What's the difference?
So we, at Visix, our media players are hardware, and we offer a bunch of media players, depending on the budget and what you plan to show on your displays. There have been customers who have said, like, oh, let's cheap out and get, the cheapest player, and we're going to try and make it work on a 4K display. And
it's going to look like crap.
It's not going to perform the way you want. It's really not. It's going to lead to, frustrations because this is a very visual, product, and you want it to look great.
And it needs to be slick. If your stuff isn't at least as good as what's on my phone, why would I pay attention to what you're doing?
Exactly. Yeah, honestly.
Honestly, I mean, this is so slick and smooth. I need to see that, or I just laugh at you.
Right. So, I understand that it is tempting to say, we'll just get the cheapest hardware and we'll figure it out. We'll work our content around that.
Right.
But that's really, in my opinion, the wrong way of thinking. You need to say, what type of content do we want to show now and in the future?
And in the future, exactly. Consider what might happen.
Right. Are we going to scale the system up? Are we going to play 4K video later? Or are we going to have interactive projects later with touchscreens and all these types of inputs? And if that's the case, if you can see your organization doing that, maybe it's worth looking into our mid-tier, higher-tier players.
Right.
It's funny because VLC Media Player and like Windows Media Player are also media players, but those are media player softwares that live on our media player hardware. So when Visix refers to a media player,
like
we're
Russian
referring to our
dolls
hardware.
nested.
Little nesting dolls.
nested dolls.
It can get a little complex sometimes, as is most technologies. But yeah, our media players are hardware, and then it uses media player software as well.
Gotcha. Okay. The way I understand it is basically one media player could go out to. I mean, you could hook it up so it goes out to multiple displays easily. But it's going to basically be able to handle one playlist set.
So basically, our lower end media players are meant to power one display at a time. Now, as you just said, you can use some type of video distribution to have it power multiple displays, but they're all going to look exactly the same.
Right, they're always going to have the exact same content at the exact same moment.
Exactly.
Throughout the whole floor, the whole building, or whatever.
And depending on what type of content you're going to show, you can usually have different playback zones within your layout. So more than one thing can play at any given time, even our lowest end player. It's not that if you get the Nano or our cheapest players that you can only play one thing at once. You can have
it doesn't have to all be full screen.
It does not.
Though to be fair, full screen content, I just want this out there officially, looks fantastic.
True.
And you should certainly use it at least from time to time.
Yeah, so create a layout playlist, and have some full screen content, then break it up with maybe 2 content zones, maybe a little ticker at the bottom, something like that. So no, even our lowest end players can handle that, But
yeah, so if I have a building, a 5-floor building, and I want each floor to have different stuff on the screens, I would need 5 media players.
Correct. Ideally, you're going to have 5 different media players.
Right.
Exactly.
One for each set of playlists.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. So that's cool.
So there's quite a few things you want to consider before you just get our hardware. You do not want to just say, what's the cheapest? Yes, that. Right. We'll take that, please.
But also, don't just go buying the 12 output just because what the heck. Too. I mean, that's also silly.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it goes the other way as well. You don't want to, overspend and get some crazy overkill system that, we're just going to show JPEGs all day.
Right. JPEGs. We're not even doing the Ken Burns effect. Just the JPEGs.
Just JPEGs, and they just cut to the next
No
JPEG.
text, just kitten pictures.
Absolutely.
And of course, just like with software, you have to do these updates. You just have to do them.
Yes.
Hardware, by the way, also needs to be updated.
That is correct.
And what is it that gets updated? It's the operating system. It's the drivers. What is it?
Both of those. So all of our hardware is Windows-based. And currently, at the time of recording here, we're using Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. And we picked that not just for fun, but because...
And IoT means Internet of Things.
Internet of Things, that's right. That's the hot word this day and age.
Which is, for those that don't know, that's devices using the Internet to communicate with other devices.
Yes.
And human beings aren't really involved in that process.
These are automatons that sort of run themselves.
Yeah, this is your high-end Swedish refrigerator with a sensor that says, oops, I'm out of milk, and places an order to the shop, and all you know is that the milk shows up.
Right. So these are not your regular Windows 10 Home or Pro versions. So we picked Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, specifically the long-term servicing channel, because Microsoft ensures that those will get updates for a decade. They're really, really great because we want our hardware to last a long time. We want our software to last a long time. So we pick this more specialized Windows 10 so that, it's supported for a long time.
Right.
And so Windows Update, is enabled out of the box, and it will run by itself in the background, and it will update, Windows components, it will update drivers, it will update firmware as needed. Or you can use your own Windows Update system there, whatever policies you want to push.
Sure. What if I forget to update, or what if I don't want to? I have to be honest, I don't understand. I guess maybe I understand why some people don't want to update things.
I get it. I'm sure, some people can be jaded with Windows. They're used to Windows Update just running while they're giving some PowerPoint presentation or something.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, sometimes you're like, oh, you're going to force me to update.
Right.
I have stuff to do.
Microsoft knows what you want.
Yeah, exactly. I said later because I meant later.
Right. And that's why we picked Windows 10 IoT Enterprise. It's way less intense with the updates. If you're used to Windows 10 Home and Pro, it will just update itself in the middle of you working. It will just reboot. Windows 10 IoT Enterprise is
and if it only took 10 minutes, I wouldn't mind. But every once in a great while, you get one of these crazy, practically starting from fresh ones, and you're like,
well, that's cool.
Is that 4 hours?
Yeah, right.
Of my day? Well, I guess I'm done working.
Right. So
what's on at the movies?
So we've customized Windows 10 out of the box a little bit to be a little cooler with its updates.
Right.
However, if you want to get more granular and control things yourself, you can absolutely join these to your domain and, again, push your own policies that control updates manually.
Right.
And then outside of Windows updates and driver updates, you've got Signage Suite updates. So you've got our product.
Right, the software, the CMS itself.
Exactly. Yeah. And so right now, we release an update. Generally, I believe it's about every month. And we try and release them consistently. They have bug fixes, performance improvements, and then customers love the feature enhancements.
UI feature enhancements and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we release those pretty often, and those you install yourself. However, obviously it would be a huge pain to go to each player and install the latest Engage on it, one by one, especially if
you've got 50.
Yeah, right. If you've got
50. And that may sound, I'm not being funny there. There was somebody, I can't remember who it was, maybe a school that I did a case study for some years ago. No joke. He said, we have 50 players.
Right. Yeah, that can be annoying.
It was the whole campus and then another campus somewhere else and another campus somewhere else.
Well, and that's the worst part, in my opinion, is when you have multiple physical locations in your organization. You have players all over the place. Like they're all over the U.S. and have fun updating those. So we thought of that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So ideally, you're running Signage Suite and there's an update, and you say, this update has a new feature that I really, really want. You install the update on your managed server first. That will update and manage in the web UI and everything to the latest release. And then we actually have an Engage upgrade utility that can be run remotely. Not necessarily from the server. It can be from most most computers on your network. But basically, you run this utility. It will reach out to all of your Engage players and upgrade them remotely. Then reboot. They'll start playing the same content, and we'll erase your content. It'll start playing the same content just with the newer Engage.
But, I mean, it's just because it does take the players down for a brief...
It does take the players down for a brief
hours,
time.
But...
No.
But,
in fact, while the upgrade is running, the players will continue to play content. The only time the players are down
I get no
is to upgrade. You get very little downtime. They just have to reboot, basically.
Right. But even so, probably best not to do it in the middle of your day if you know you have a lot of foot traffic.
Exactly, which is why we've thought of that too, and we have scheduled upgrades. You can run that same utility and say, upgrade tonight at like 11:30 when no one's around, and that will...
Do they all have to be on?
Yes, they do have to be on and reachable from that utility.
Right, so I can't just power down the whole system and go home and wake up the next day and it's like, hey, everything's all updated. So I do have to leave it on all night.
Exactly. You do want to leave it on, which most people leave their digital signage on most of the time anyway. They'll usually just turn off their displays but leave the players on, which that's fine. Right. You can just turn off your displays. So we've tried to make remote management and remote upgrades as easy as they can get.
And of course, the danger of not updating is what? That it just breaks? That it just stops working?
I mean, ideally, it's not just going to break. However, if there is some bug that was fixed in a later release, and then you hit that bug, we're going to say, you got to upgrade to take care of that.
What a shame you didn't upgrade.
What a shame.
This is no longer a problem.
So, you've got bug fixes, stability stuff, performance improvements. But again, like I was saying earlier, it's those feature enhancements that everyone always wants. So a customer we'll try, we'll try something like in design and, oh, no, it doesn't do that thing that I really want it to do. They'll talk with our support team, maybe the training team, and Visix as a company tries to be very receptive to change.
Well, like I know sometimes it's client suggestions.
It's a lot of client suggestions.
That drive what's going into the next release.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, people, we got a bunch of people who want this. Let's prioritize
Yeah, basically every month we'll sit down and say, okay, we got the following feature suggestions. Oh, we want this type of filter. Oh, we want that type of input. Wouldn't it be really cool if we had that kind of button? And, the executive team will all sit down and we'll say, like, yeah.
That would be
totally
cool.
Doable. Yeah, that is a good idea.
God, I wish I had thought of it.
And so one classic example is in design. The way design used to work, Access TV design, is you'd make a layout, and then you'd have to go and save the layout, then close it, then synchronize it. And okay, that makes sense on a technical level, but customers would forget one step. They'd save it and close it, but maybe not sync. And then they'd say, well, why is it not on the server? Oh, well, you didn't sync. So customers said, hey, that workflow makes sense, but can you streamline it? Right. And we said, yeah, that certainly makes sense. And so we made a save, close, sync button.
Oh,
and
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, it just does that.
And it automatically does it all.
Exactly. And so it's things like that. So that's what you're missing out on by not updating.
Yeah. Almost never is an update. Does an update make something worse?
No. Yeah. Our development team here is very, very good at doing regression testing, before just releasing an update, because, just an awful worst case scenario is pushing out an update to everyone and saying, hey, check out this new release. And then customers say, whoa, it just deleted my content, or now my players have some weird .NET error or something. Right, and so
or like what happened, what was it with iTunes? Suddenly everybody was forced to have the new U2 album, whether they wanted it or
not. You're gonna like this U2 album because it's free. Yeah, exactly. So we certainly do a lot of testing here, where we just say, hey, update, because we understand, this is. You communicate to your employees, your own customers this way. And we understand this is an important system, and it's a distributed system, and it's an enterprise-grade system.
And, the nightmarish bedtime story told to communications professionals in organizations that use digital signage is the terrible story of the night of the dreaded black screen. Where in the middle of the day, when the vice president of operations came for a visit to our facility, and the darn thing went down, and we looked like morons.
Exactly.
And now we're all going to be looking for work.
Exactly. So you definitely want to keep your system up to date. We're doing testing on the updates. We're putting in performance improvements. We are constantly listening to what customers want.
Right.
Some people want stuff immediately. Hey, you really should have this new feature in as soon as possible. And some customers say, hey, it would be cool just in the future,
down the line.
This thing, this web UI element. Yeah. And we're like, that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant. The interesting thing is, in the manufacturing age, 19th century, early to mid, even beginning of the late 20th century, we made things. And those things, yes, all things degrade over time. Metal rusts, paper disintegrates in rain and yellows and gets brittle and this and this and this. But there's this permanent kind of idea. You built it, there it was, you put it on a shelf, you drop it on your foot, you break your toe. But all of this electronic stuff is it's a process.
Yes.
In more than a product.
Absolutely.
All of this stuff is a process that's constantly evolving and changing and shifting.
It is a service. At the end of the day, it really
even though it's hardware,
Right.
that
Yeah,
we're talking
we are
about.
updating it.
Yeah, like these players, these are physical things. Your server is a physical thing,
Right.
but it's still constantly shifting, changing.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, like, even between Signage Suite version 1.0 and the current release, it's completely different. We've introduced so many new features. We've refined workflows. We've refined the UI. We've had performance changes. It's
like watching a kid grow up.
It's like watching a kid grow up. It's exactly correct.
You're like, I can't believe 6 years ago you were 10 years old and now you're driving and stealing money out of my wallet.
Exactly. That's what we're trying to get with Signage Suite.
Signage Suite. It steals money out of your wallet.
Exactly.
And lies to you about what it did.
Exactly. That's what Sean wouldn't pick that as the new company slogan. I don't know why. But exactly. So while our hardware we plan, I've designed our hardware to be enterprise grade and to last a long time. That's why we use metal chassis. That's why we use big heat sinks. That's why we use, these bigger fans. It's because we want the hardware to last a long time, but the software is constantly improving and getting better.
Right.
Again, every month we're putting out new stuff.
Yeah. So get those updates, folks. Get them.
Absolutely.
Get them. All right. So even though we start off talking about hardware, you can't help it. You end up talking about software in the end anyway, because that's what this is.
It's an interplay. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's been argued that the 21st century is shaping up to be the century in which nouns become verbs, in which everything becomes a process. I mean, it is. It's servicing. It's digital signaging. It's this. Everything's becoming an ing gerund, sort of a noun verb, and this is just what we're seeing. So even though it's physical, it's still a constantly evolving and shifting thing. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Joe Murray.
Of course, thank you
for talking to me today, and we'd like to thank all of you for listening. Hey, want more free stuff? Then head to the resources section of Visix.com for free masterclass guides, blogs, videos, and more to help you with your digital signs. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review of this episode, and connect with us on social media.